Welcome back to Ravenheart 2022. I'm Kai Olssen, the curator. Today I'm so fortunate to be lucky to be joined by director Mehran Torgoley and actor, producer Llana Barron. Welcome to Norway and welcome to Ravenheart, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Really happy to be here.
Well, let's talk about the movie you're screening tonight, The CURSE of Aurorore,
Yes.
which is kind of interesting because suddenly we have had a research of found footage horror, and this Deadstream have received really good, surprisingly good reviews, and also kind of you feel that that these two films, including yours, of course, are rekindling the found footage phenomenon, the genre.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Lon and I had just finished a larger budget comedy film, and what we wanted to do was wanted to go back to the things that we were a little more passionate about, which is things that are darker and a bit more horror themed. And when we came up with this story, it seemed like truly the best way to tell the story was found footage.
Yeah.
As we talked about the fact that it was based on an actual true crime issue, it felt like keeping it as real as possible was the right move.
Yes, because this is actually based after you said that this film is actually based on a very tragic true crime story from Canada. Could you explain a bit more about how you came over the story of and explain more about the tragedy?
Yeah. So Aurore Gagnon was a child who was abused very severely by her parents in Fortierville. It's a very small town in the area where we shot in the province of Quebec, Canada. And she ended up dying or succumbing to the wounds from years of abuse from her parents. And what we say in the film about, she was sort of discovered on a pile of hay being eaten by rats on her own excrement. That is true. That's how she was found. It was a neighbor who came in and hadn't seen the little girl in a while, and she just busted through the parents and went right upstairs and found her. And anyway, it's a story that at the time, in that very rural area of Canada, people were mainly having children to be workers on the farm. And there wasn't, I'm not saying that all families were treating their children poorly, but I think children were kind of looked at almost like farm animals. And because of this story, sort of a abuse awareness campaign kind of was born in that area. And they actually wrote her story into plays, and they started performing it at churches, basically to teach the parents, you can't do this to your children. If you do, they'll die, and this is a horrible thing. So Aurore became a martyr for the people of rural Quebec. And still very much is revered to this day, which is why her grave is still covered in toys and offerings by locals, because they treasure her. And she's like a pure innocent, being so young and dying at the hands of her parents. And so anyway, it's a very tragic story, and I came to learn that this happened literally 10 minutes from where my mother and her family kind of grew up and have a house that I've been going there for years. And when I found out that this had happened there, I said, oh my gosh, I have to go see her grave. I'm very interested in this story. I read a lot more about it, the court transcripts about it, very fascinating. And I told Mehran about it. And ultimately we decided that a ghost story involving Aurore and the evil spirits of her parents would be the best way to kind of use that story.
I didn't really want to make a story about this at all because I didn't feel
it's very heavy stuff.
Yes.
It's heavy, and it's not my story to tell.
No.
She's at least somewhat connected. So as we workshopped the idea and what we could do, we figured out something that was tangential to the story, that extended the story, a fictionalized future of what would happen to these people.
No, because I see that you did so care. It seems like you did so care not to exploit the story, but actually have use the backdrop and use it also as what you can say an historical awareness about what happened there.
Yes.
Right.
How did the locals treat you during production?
Wonderfully. We had
Absolutely.
an amazing experience with the locals. The town mayor of Saint Sophie de Livrard, which is the town next to Fortierville, which is where our house is. Jean-Guy Bidet became like our production best friend, and he was happy to help us get into all these great locations. He had the key to the church, so we could use one of the church interiors. He helped us find the house, which we used for Monsieur Gagnon's house, that cool, like, wooden house. That's family members of his.
Helped us find scores of extras for various
and he
scenes.
was an extra. In fact,
Yep.
he's I don't want to give anything away, but he's featured at the very end. You see him holding something important. And then the community, because we needed a substantial amount of extras, and most of the people there only speak French. But thanks to our producer who's here, Minna, who is bilingual, she was able to help us communicate, and we were able to draw people in from the whole town, and they were really excited when they found out we were paying money for them to come and spend an hour, walking from one building to the next, or standing in a cold barn with a cult cape on. Most of the extras that we got were over the age of 70, which was amazing. And we were like, okay, so here's what you're signing up for, like, just in case you're not cool with that. And they were all like, yes, like they were so excited. And actually at the very, very end, after a long night in that barn, which was not heated and it was freezing cold, they came up and started hugging us to say goodbye, and they were saying, bonne expérience, great experience, thank you so much. And we were like, oh, and I actually think that this might have been one of the most exciting things to come through the town.
It's
in
a town
very
of
long
1,200
time.
people?
500.
500 people? Yeah. So we had about 10% of the town at one point.
But I also want to add that the church where Aurore is buried, where her grave is, there's a group of women who are sort of in control of the events that the church participates in, and they gave us permission to use her grave. And because it was winter and the toys had been brought in, all those offerings get brought in for safekeeping for the winter, they actually went and took them all out and rearranged them for us so we could get the shots we wanted. So that just goes to show you the kind of amazing cooperation that we received from these folks in these small towns.
Especially when you've been doing this on this budget. The budget was what, 70,000 United States dollars or something?
What was
the budget for the movie? The budget.
The budget.
The budget.
Our
Oh,
budget.
yeah. Very,
yes,
very
under
low
100,000.
Yeah, very low budget. But when you're paying cash and they don't have anything else to do, they're like, sure, we'll come and stand outside and make some money. And it was great. It was
how
so
did you
fun.
finance the film?
Through
A
self.
collection of personal funding.
Yep, our pockets.
So no crowdfunding, no applying for
No.
Canadian grants, because in Canada you can apply for state grants.
No, our budget was actually just a little too low for a lot of those incentives, though we did look into it.
And we weren't a fully Canadian production, so we weren't entitled to those kind of grants.
I see.
We're both American filmmakers.
Right.
Because what else, the interesting part about that you managed to have, that the extras are mostly of old people, is that it gives this a very, we'll almost say Wicker Man-like feel. Was Wicker Man an inspiration when we come to regarding older films?
I think films like Wicker Man, definitely Wicker Man, but things like that where you just have this, even Rosemary's Baby, where there is this sort of simmering town collective mindset society
that's watching and guarding or protecting something, and
what was interesting was the town itself, because we were there and we didn't, the town knew that we were there. We spoke to the mayor, but we didn't exactly talk to all the neighbors every day. But you could see these people that lived there kind of looking and seeing what we were doing from time to time. And that kind of parallels what ends up happening in the actual film. In the fact that the characters in the film are constantly being watched, and I remember seeing people from time to time just kind of curious as what was going on with this House of Americans.
There's actually one kind of funny moment in the film when we walk into the little grocery store, and at the end of it, I think the shopkeeper starts yelling for us to stop filming, and at that moment, two just patrons happen to walk into frame, and because they thought that our cashier, who was an actor, was real, because he was screaming at us, calling us like, stupid American, stop filming. These guys, they saw him and then looked at the camera and gave the dirtiest look and kept on walking, and we were like, that was perfect. That was perfect.
There's another moment at the
we
restaurant.
didn't, yeah, we didn't ask them to do it, but they gave us
Happy
the dirtiest
accident.
looks.
Happy
And so,
accident.
of course, afterwards, we're, Minna's running up to them and, here's a release. Do you want to be in a movie? And they were really confused what was happening. And that also happened in the restaurant
In
where
the
we had
restaurant.
a couple
Yep.
of elderly folks walking in and they look into the window and they see us with filming and they there's this space, but so some of those happy accidents were
Yep.
really great.
Because one thing I have to ask you as a director, how did you approach this, and also you as an actor, how did you approach the performances? Because so much in found footage horror is based on that the performances seem completely natural.
Yeah, that was really, in my opinion, that's all we had. In fact, even the idea that you'll notice there's hidden things in frames from time to time, and some of those weren't planned initially. I had always intended to add some of that, but as we were filming, I would look for odd framing to add things. But I was looking at this in terms of all I really have are these mostly 3 actors at a time.
Yep.
So we didn't spend very much time with aside from, I mean, Llana and I had spent a lot of time together, and Minna, but the other 2 leads, Lex Wilson and Jordan Kaplan, we didn't know them. We met them a couple times online.
We did online casting.
We had a couple of little rehearsal-ish, but really not much. But we had, 2 days before we started
We had
shooting?
2 days from when we arrived.
Yeah,
To
we
kind
had
of
meals
do
together.
1 day of rehearsal, table read. We did a walkthrough, and that was it. But the 2 guys just ended up being.
Yeah, well, the most important thing to me
Wonderful.
was let's just hang out. Let's be really comfortable. Because I kept telling them what I want them to do is I want them to live in the scene. If they go off the script, that's fine. I will, if it works better than, or if I think it works better than the way something is written, that's fine. We probably are 90% scripted at this point. I mean, really, and rehearsed through each of those scenes.
Yeah, it's a full script. I mean,
Yeah.
pretty much all the dialogue is dead
Yeah.
on. There were a few little, nuances and things that were
Yeah.
done that added to it, and then a few of those happy accidents, of course. In fact, there's a scene where we're driving, and there's what we say it's a snow twister in the middle
right.
of the road, and it looks like a ghost. That was completely accident, and we
That's
just
not
kept,
special
we all
effects.
stayed
Oh.
in character, and we just allowed it to happen in
Yep.
character. And I think that because we were all playing characters that are kind of similar to who we are, it was sort of easy to just kind of keep it going. And we ended up sort of feeling, by the end of it, we were all like best friends, and we had such a
Absolutely.
great
Yep.
camaraderie, chemistry with each other.
And speaking of accidents, there was a not so happy accident right before shooting, and you can say
Yes.
I was almost going, whoa, first time I watched this was, she's really method here. But yeah,
I'm
can
so
you explain
metal.
Super
more-
method.
Yeah. Right. So about 3 days before my flight to go to Canada to shoot, I had a fall, and I tore my meniscus on my right knee. I have a little scar from surgery because I did later have to get surgery. And yeah, it was because we were leaving in just a few days, and we had already set up everything for the production, and with very little budget, it's like you can't just cancel that stuff.
No.
You might not get your money back, and we don't have that money
Well,
again to do it again.
Furthermore, if we had canceled, COVID would have hit by the time
Oh,
she
yeah.
would have
We
been
finished
good.
shooting
We didn't know that.
like a
Right
month and a
before.
half before the big wave came
Yeah.
to the United States. So I went to the emergency room, and thankfully it wasn't broken. They did X-rays, and then they said, "Well, you've likely torn something. You'll need an MRI, so you need to come back in a few days and get that." I said, "Well, I'm not going to be here in a few days." So they gave me a giant knee brace, and we had a cane, thankfully. And they just said, "Be very, very careful, and when you get back, you're going to have to take care of this." So I went there with some good meds and a knee brace and a cane, and Minna set me up with a cane that has spikes, which I hear you Norwegians know
Yeah,
lots
we do,
about.
yeah.
This is very common here, so I didn't know it existed. And so yeah, we got through it. It was
We got through it.
it was
She was a
much more
trooper.
physically challenging than I initially would have expected.
I think it
I
helps to
didn't have
build
an injury.
tension.
Yeah, and it also makes your character seem more vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And also helps with the Austrian tension. It helps create the mood when things get terrifying in the film.
It actually, in another way, it even helped. Initially, we were going to have the Llana character drive through. There's a lot of driving scenes. She was going to be the driver.
I was supposed to be driving.
And it actually worked out much better with her not driving because we have Aaron driving most of the time, and he's usually holding the camera. So it actually gave us more time to have him on screen, which we wouldn't have had otherwise.
That's right. He wouldn't be
it
on,
really
on
helped.
camera
And
much.
speaking of the filming, how did you approach this with the guy who plays the cameraman? Was he a cameraman in real life?
All three of the actors had some experience with cameras, but none of them are filmmakers like that. They're all actors and writers. And so essentially I was as close as possible guiding them as to what I wanted. There were some very, very specific things I wanted the camera to do, but effectively I was having the camera be an actor and I would have an actor be the camera.
There was a lot of practical effects here.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I wanted the movie to feel as real as possible, from the acting to the special effects to the camera work. And I worked with someone named Pierre Slumberger. He was our practical effects supervisor, and I handled all the digital effects and compositing, and Llana handled the sound special effects, which is a very important part of making all the special effects feel real as well. But that stuff happened very methodically as well as very organically. There was a number of things that were planned. There are hidden things within frames, and then there are the things that I discovered in post or I discovered on set. Or I'd say, well, why don't, as we come in, just have whoever's operating the camera look to the right to give me a hollow area that I could potentially place something at one point or another. So it was this kind of give and take between what was in my head, what was in our team's plan, and what we were reacting to on the day.
And, because this is low budget, we had to really work with everything that we had to make some of these effects successful. So there's a scene when shit really starts going wrong in the house, and it's almost like an earthquake, and doors fly open and things slam and the light fixture starts swinging, and essentially I think we had 6 different people rigged at different parts of the rooms with a fishing line and or ready to slam doors. We also had our special effects supervisor installed these little
The solenoids.
solenoid things to make the cabinets pop out.
What's interesting is on a shot like that, for example, on a typical movie set, there's always going to be people that are literally just sitting back and watching what's happening, waiting for cut or action. And in that case, I think every single person we had a job somewhere, whether they were acting or doing sound or triggering something or operating camera. Everybody was actually very busy at that point.
We had to run this. It was like a series of scenes, all in order. And I think we only had 4 breakaway glasses, the Hollywood glass. So we could only do it in 4 takes. We actually did it in 3, and we crushed that last glass like Jewish wedding style, because we got through that. But there was a lot of hard work to make up most of that.
After you were finished, did the COVID affect the production negatively in any way?
It didn't hold us back at all, but it was very challenging.
Sure, it made it
more so
difficult.
on them than on me. But there were even times on me when I had to either operate the camera or be standing somewhere, and like after a few moments, you just can't feel your fingers, and there's a burning in the fire of ice, basically.
The scene where we're laying in the street at night happened to be the coldest day on record for November in that part of Canada in some many years. It was -9 for us. What is that? -42. And we were actually laying on frozen street with ice, and of course with my messed up leg and my cane, having to get up from the ice and run into the hot van, which was where we could warm up. So those, we had lots of thermal underwear.
Yes.
That got us through it.
I see the movie has it's gotten several really good reviews. And how do you feel that movie has been received? I mean, you're basically on streaming and hasn't got big cinema distribution.
We actually did have a cinema release in Canada. That was where we premiered, and we did very well there for the very brief amount of time that we were out. I'm really happy with the response. I wish that it could have been seen. I still wish that it could be seen by a much larger audience. But among the people that have seen the movie, we have incredibly great fans. People watch the movie. They call it their comfort film. They'll watch it once a week.
We just had a fan tell us yesterday on Facebook that he watches it at least once a week. We've had other people say it's their comfort film. They like hanging out with us. I think they feel like they're our friend, and I think that that's a big part of what Mehran wanted to capture.
Absolutely.
Was he wanted people to feel like they're hanging out with us, they're going through it with us, sort of voyeuristic.
For
you know?
good or bad, like
Yeah.
you're right there with them. You're feeling.
Which makes
what
it,
they're
I think, a
feeling.
little more scary. It adds that sense of dread. You know.
You get to familiarize yourself
Absolutely.
in the characters.
And you ultimately really care what's going to happen to them. You don't want your new friends to get hurt or whatever.
So, future. What's the future for Curse of Aurore? What's the future for you as filmmakers?
Well, the future for Curse of Aurora is we have a few more film fests
Yeah.
that it is accepted into, and it will be screening over the next few months.
Yeah, we have Sydney, Australia. We have Italy.
Yeah.
We have there's a number of festivals we still haven't heard back from. We do actually have a treatment for a sequel, which was something we hadn't really initially considered, but some of our fans kept asking, when is there going to be a sequel?
Over and over.
So we sat down one day and we said, okay, if we ever did a sequel, what would that story look like? And we actually did write a full treatment, which
Yeah.
we've pitched.
Which took a lot longer than one day.
Yeah, so we
But
have
yes.
that pitch has been going out. And we also have another script, not found footage, a horror movie that we're hoping that would take place in the Appalachian Mountains up in the south, which is where I live, in North Carolina.
We're developing a couple of other things right now, possibly. I mean,
We'd love to shoot something here.
yes, we'd
We
love to
really
do some
wanna
sort of
shoot something in
international
Norway.
horror would be great.
Move it from the Appalachians to Norway instead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we could possibly do
We
that.
could sort of transpose it a little bit, translate it to that.
Yeah, but our work is not done.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to actually watching the film in the big screen here
Yes.
pretty soon. So
Can't wait.
Best of luck and thank you guys for coming here. Thank you and best of luck with you and future projects and of course Curse of Aurore. And
Thank you for having us. It's
Thank you so much for having us.
been wonderful.
So I just want to say to everybody here, lock on.
Lock on.
Lock on.
Lock on.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.